Hello everyone. In this lesson, I will continue my series of learning math the easy way, explaining operations. Operations in mathematics, I'm sure you might be familiar with: addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. Also, there's also an operation that's called negation, which is basically negating the number. For example, if you have the number 5, the operation negation will give us -5. Now, these are the operations, the basic operations in mathematics. Now, I will start with the rational numbers, which are fractions, applying operations to fractions. So fractions, as we all know from the first lesson, they belong to the rational numbers. And rational numbers are all those numbers in mathematics that could be written as a quotient of two numbers. For example, 1 over 2, which we will learn about. This is actually 1/2, and the decimal representation of this number is 0.50. Now, fractions were invented in mathematics, or were evolved in mathematics because of the need. For example, if we have $1,000 and we want to divide it between 10 people, how much each one gets? So we have $1,000 needs to be divided into 10 parts for 10 people. How much each person gets? So each person will get 1,000 divided by 10. And when we divide 1,000 by 10, we could think about the 1,000 as 100 times 10 divided by 10. And now we could see clearly that this 10 in the numerator could be cancelled with this 10 in the denominator. And the result is actually 100. So if we divide $1,000 into 10 parts, or if we divide it for 10 people, then each person will get $100. It's easy. Now we could see clearly how we form fractions. Now the first representation of rational numbers is, or the first step in learning fractions is actually to learn how to represent whole numbers as fractions. So if we have the number 3, what will this number be? Okay, 3, we could think about this 3 as one person has 3 apples. Okay, so one person has 3 apples. So we could say that these apples are 3 divided by one person, or 3 are owned by one person. So we could represent the whole number, any whole number, as a number divided by 1. Let's keep that in mind. That's very important in understanding fractions. Now, let's say the number 1 will be 1 over 1. Now, if we have one apple and we divided it between 2 people, each person will get how much? Each person will actually get, okay, so one apple divided by 2 people. Each one gets, we have one apple, we divided it by 2. So each one gets 1 over 2, or 1 apple over 2. And this is actually called half. And now similarly, we could do something or do similar derivation for 1/3, 1/4, or a quarter, 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, 1/10, 1/11, and so on. So these are all fractions. Now, how do we write this fraction in the form of a decimal number? Let's start with 1/2. So 1/2 could be rewritten in decimal. So let's understand what is decimal. Decimal means, as we learned in part 2, if you haven't checked part 2, then you should check it out. Decimal is actually from coming from the word deci, DCI. So decimal, this deci means 10, and it's actually meaning decimal is base 10, and base 10 means we have 10 digits, and then we start going into double digits and so on. So decimal means base 10. Now to transform this number or this fraction into a decimal number, then we need to represent it as the denominator has to equal 10 somehow. So let's see how will we achieve that. So to make the denominator 10 in this case, it's very easy. We just multiply the top of this fraction and the bottom for us to keep, or for the purpose of keeping the value of this fraction unchanged, we could multiply by the same number. As we here canceled the same number because it repeats in the top and the bottom, we could just imagine that we could multiply by the same number. And of course, we could cancel it, but that will serve us no purpose. So when we multiply, the denominator will become a 10, which is where we want to get to make it into a base 10, and the top will be 5. Now 5 over 10 in decimal, this representation means that, okay, if we imagine the 5 as a number, the 5 as a number could always be written 5 point. This is called decimal point, 0.0. So this is decimal point. Decimal point meaning we are, or this number is just half as a whole, and the fraction in this case is 0. That's what it means. And 0 over any number, or 0 over 1 in this case, is 0. So decimal point. Now when we divide by 10, what we do is we move this decimal point 1 unit to the left. So if we could imagine this 5 to be this way, now this decimal point will move 1 unit to the left. So 1/2 could be rewritten as 0.50 or 0.5. And that's how we rewrite 1/2 in decimal. Now let's try to do the same thing for a 3 or 1/3. How would we write 1/3 as a decimal? There's no number that we could multiply by to get this 3 to equal 10. Unless we multiply by, let's say, 3.333. Let's try to multiply by 3.33. Let's see what happens. So we will multiply by 3.33. So what we get in the denominator is 9.99, which is very close to 10. And in the top is 3.33. Now, if we imagine that we could keep repeating the 3's and the 9's will repeat, and eventually, if we want to round the number to, let's say, the nearest millionth, then it will become eventually a 10 in the bottom, and the top will be a repeating decimal or repeating number. Now we do the same procedure. We move this point 1 unit this way, and it becomes 0.3333, and it continues. And to represent this continuation, we place a bar here, just to show that it continues. So we could just show as this 0.3 bar. That's it for now. I will do another video after this one to practice more on fractions.